For thousands of years, humans have searched for ways to change how we think, feel, and perceive the world. We've done it in temples, on battlefields, in medical chambers, and behind closed doors. Drugs have shaped religion, medicine, economics, war, politics, and culture. They've built civilizations and destroyed them. They've been worshipped as sacred and demonized as evil. But if we zoom out beyond our modern laws and fears, a much bigger pattern emerges. This is the full, unfiltered history of drugs, a history that reveals who we are, what we crave, and how powerful substances shaped the world we live in today. Long before humans understood chemistry, they understood curiosity. Our ancestors lived surrounded by plants, some dangerous, some healing, some transformative. Archaeologists have found evidence of psychoactive plant use going back tens of thousands of years. Cave paintings in Spain depict what are believed to be hallucinogenic mushrooms. Bone pipes found in Africa likely carried cannabis. Even animals consume intoxicating plants. Reindeer eat psychedelic mushrooms, and birds get drunk on fermented berries. So imagine early humans discovering that certain plants could ease pain, help them sleep, create visions, spark courage, or bring euphoria. This wasn't just recreation. It was survival, ritual, and exploration. In a way, drugs became humanity's earliest technology, a tool to cope with a harsh and unpredictable world. In ancient civilizations, druguse wasn't even Hawaii. It was structured, ritualized, and often controlled by priests or healers. In Egypt, opium was used as both a sedative and a spiritual tool. In Mesopotamia, the Sumerians called the poppy the joy plant. In India, a mysterious substance called soma was praised in sacred hymns as the drink of the gods. Its true identity is lost, but theories range from psychedelic mushrooms to effect. Across the Americas, indigenous cultures used peyote, tobacco, coca leaves, and psychedelic brews like ayahuasca to communicate with spirits and heal the sick. To these cultures, drugs were bridges. They connected the human world with the divine and shaped rituals, myths, and community life. While modern society often treats intoxication as a problem, many ancient people saw transcendence as a path to meaning. Of course, alcohol deserves its own chapter in human history. While many substances were ritualistic, alcohol became our social glue. As farming developed, humans began storing grain, and almost immediately, they discovered fermentation. Beer wasn't just a drink. It was often safer than water. It was full of calories, and it became essential for large gatherings. In early cities like Uruk, alcohol played a role in religious festivals, diplomacy, social bonding, and even worker payments. The laborers building the Egyptian pyramids were paid in beer. Greek symposiums were centered on drinking, philosophy, and debate. Romans drank wine daily, proudly viewing it as a marker of civilization itself. Alcohol wasn't just tolerated, it became a foundation of social and political life. As civilizations advanced, drugs transitioned from spiritual tools to medical technology. In ancient China, cannabis was used as an anesthetic during surgery. In Greece, Hippocrates, the father of medicine, prescribed opium for headaches and insomnia. Roman doctors developed tinctures, balms, and mixtures with psychoactive ingredients. During the Middle Ages, herbal medicine dominated Europe. Monasteries grew and prepared medicinal plants, many containing narcotics or strong psychoactives. Opium-based mixtures became universal, especially laudanum, which was used to ease pain, anxiety, coughs, insomnia, and sadness. For centuries, what we now call drugs was simply the backbone of medicine. Then, when global trade exploded, the world discovered stimulants and civilization changed forever. Café transformed the Middle East and Europe. Coffee houses became centers of political debate, scientific discussion, and even rebellion. Tea became so central to life in China and Britain that it helped shape colonial expansion. Sugar fueled addiction-like consumption worldwide, and built entire economies on the backs of enslaved labor. And tobacco spread with astonishing speed, becoming one of the most profitable crops ever grown. These substances weren't fringe. They were pillars of global trade and the engines of empire. But this era also led to the darkest chapter in the history of drugs, opium. In the 1800s, Britain desperately wanted Chinese tea, but China didn't want British goods. So Britain flooded China with Indian-grown opium. Addiction skyrocketed. When Chinese officials tried to stop it, Britain responded with war. The Opium Wars weren't about freedom or fairness. They were about profit and addiction on a national scale. China's defeat reshaped global power, weakened the Qing dynasty, and unleashed political instability that lasted for more than a century. It remains one of history's clearest examples of a nation weaponizing drugs. In the late 1800s, chemistry changed everything. Scientists created synthetic and purified drugs that were far stronger than anything found in nature. Heroin was invented by Bayer and marketed as a non-addictive alternative to morphine. Cocaine was sold in pharmacies and added to tonics, including early cocaine. Methamphetamine was embraced as a stimulant and later used by soldiers in World War II to stay awake and fearless. Barbiturates and early tranquilizers filled medicine cabinets. These substances were not illegal. They were advertised and widely prescribed. Addiction was unseen as an unfortunate side effect. It was often overlooked entirely because the business was just too profitable. But as addiction rose, governments reacted with fear. The early 20th century saw a series of moral panics, often fueled by racism, politics, and social anxiety. Cocaine was blamed on African Americans. Opium was associated with Chinese immigrants. Cannabis was falsely linked to violence and Mexican laborers. Drug laws weren't built on science, but on prejudice and political gain. By the 1930s, many substances that had once been common medicine were suddenly criminal. In the 1970s, the United States launched the War on Drugs, a global campaign that reshaped politics, policing, and public perception. Declassified documents later revealed that some policies were designed to target specific political and ethnic groups, rather than focusing on public health. The war led to mass incarceration, especially among minority communities. It created a global enforcement system that has cost trillions of dollars, and it failed to reduce addiction. Instead, it handed the entire drug market over to powerful criminal organizations. With prohibition in place, the supply of drugs moved underground, and violence exploded. Cartels in Colombia, Mexico, and Asia became incredibly powerful. Kingpins became billionaires. Entire regions were transformed into battlegrounds. Governments launched massive military operations, but as long as demand remained high, the cartels only grew stronger. Ironically, prohibition often created the very violence it claimed to be fighting. In recent decades, however, science has begun to take a second look at many of these outlawed substances. Psychedelics have shown incredible promise for treating depression, PTSD, and addiction. MDMA-assisted therapy is now in the final stages of clinical trials. Cannabis is legal in many places and is used for pain, nausea, epilepsy, and anxiety. Society is slowly realizing that many earlier policies were based on fear, not on evidence. The same compounds that were once demonized are now being reevaluated for their healing potential. So if we step back and look at this entire timeline, one truth becomes clear. Drugs have always been part of the human story. What changes is how societies choose to respond. History shows us that people will always seek ways to alter their consciousness. It shows that prohibition rarely eliminates a substance. It just shifts control from doctors to dealers. It shows that governments often use drug policy as a tool for political influence, rather than public health. And it shows that substances repeatedly move from sacred to medical to criminal, and then back to therapeutic in predictable cycles. In the end, the story of drugs is really the story of human vulnerability, curiosity, suffering, exploration, and power. The history of drugs is not a simple story of good versus bad. It is a story of contradictions of healing and harm, spirituality and exploitation, innovation and destruction. Understanding this history doesn't just explain the past. It helps us make sense of the present and navigate the future. If you found this exploration meaningful, consider sharing it with someone who might also find it valuable. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.